All right, folks, welcome to Sober Psychology. I'm Michael, your host, a psychologist in training who's spent years dissecting the human psyche, and more importantly, a guy who's clawed his way out of the whiskey-soaked gutters of addiction. Today, we're diving into a topic that's about as uncomfortable as a hangover on a Monday morning. We're going to be talking about oversharing. It's weird. Bear with me. It's that moment when you spill your entire life story to a stranger at a coffee shop, or you post your darkest secrets on X or social media or whatnot for the world to screenshot. We're talking about why you do it, why it's a problem, and how it's a minefield for anyone who's in recovery. This isn't your grandma's self-help podcast. We're going in raw, unfiltered, and we're not here to hold your hand, so I'm sorry about that. If you're looking for validation for your verbal diarrhea, just go ahead and hit pause now, all right? But it's all love. We love you here. You can hang out if you want to. Just don't expect all the coddling. So why should you even care about this topic? Oversharing, kind of a weird one. You don't hear a lot of people talking about it. It's because oversharing isn't just awkward. It's a psychological red flag, a neon sign screaming, "I'm not okay." Studies like the one from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships in 2019 suggest that 60% of people overshare to seek validation, but that tends to backfire by alienating others and then deepening shame, right? So it's kind of a weird situation here. And if you're in recovery, like me, oversharing can oftentimes be the spark that lights the fuse of relapse. I have 100% been there, drunk, sobbing to a bartender about my childhood. And spoiler alert, it did not fix me. All right. Today we'll break down the psychology of oversharing, its ties to addiction, and I'm guaranteeing you 5 practical tools to keep your mouth shut and your dignity intact, because I'm here for you. That's why. You can expect science, you can expect hard truths, and maybe, possibly, enough dark humor to make you laugh through the cringe. So let's dive in. Welcome to the show where we break down the mental health stigma, navigate sobriety with humor, and prove that it's okay to laugh while you heal. Let's get real, let's get honest, and maybe a little weird. Growth is messy, but you don't have to do it alone. This is Sober Psychology. Well, folks, welcome back. Another episode, another 40. What is this, 40? Are we at 40 yet? 39, 40? I don't know. We're losing count. I'm not a good podcast host. We should be keeping up with this. But as always, a lot of good response last week. We're gaining more viewership on YouTube especially, but Spotify is starting to grow a lot as well. So thank you all for that. If you're a new listener who is here for the first time, well, this is basically just a podcast that is talking about addiction, but also psychology, and trying to bring those two together and work through it that way, but to also break the stigma of addiction and mental health, right? I believe today, at the time of recording this, it's our Men's Mental Health Month. And so it's really important, I think, for me personally, as a recovered alcoholic, as someone who has been diagnosed with OCD and all of the other acronyms that they want to give you. But we did an episode a couple weeks ago about suicide. We've talked about the darkest depths that you can get to. We've also talked about the serenity that's promised. If you're someone who's new to this channel as well, I'm a Christian man. My faith is rooted and centered in God, and that is the reason that I am sober. God is the reason I'm sober. My relationship with Him, leaning in constantly, and so I have somehow or another, through a lot of trials and tribulations, found this level of serenity, if you will. You know, the peaks aren't as high and the valleys aren't as low. You just are able to kind of stay in this spot knowing that tomorrow is going to be okay. And that's faith. That's tough for a lot of people. But if you are a returning viewer, thank you, as always, for the continued support. You guys are awesome. It's great. We're creeping up on 500 followers or 500 subscribers on YouTube. We're getting a lot more traction on Spotify. We'll see where it goes. We're going to keep plugging through this year, and then it may shift it a little bit and try out some new things. I don't know. But as always, thank you all for sticking around. Thank you for showing up. I hope any of this helps you, and you can always reach out to me, right? You can see the links in the bio. I'm on all socials as Sober Psychology. So reach out if you need it, right? I'm always here. I'm just as messed up as anybody else watching this, right? I don't have it together. I just somehow found a way to talk about it. So kisses, love you. I broke this down, I think, into 3 parts. Checking notes currently. Yeah, about 3 parts. So I'm going to try and stick to that, but I have a problem with oversharing, which is why I'm doing this episode, right? I don't talk a lot in this one. I don't use a lot of Freudian theory talking about the aspects of childhood trauma, but I'll try to tag that in as we go. But a lot of my oversharing comes from seeking validation. A lot of my oversharing is thinking that I'm not good enough and this person's not going to like me. So I have to earn your love and affection and care. I do this with friends. I do this with family. I just have a hard time with it, right? At the end of the day, it comes down to a low opinion of myself. And I feel like oversharing, maybe that's why we started a YouTube channel, is so I could be validated in my oversharing, right? Might as well record it. I digress. We're going to power through it. As always, you get questions and whatnot, arguments, comments, whatever, hit me up once the video is posted. But part 1 of this is what is oversharing and why do we do it? Oversharing is when you basically dump your emotional baggage on someone who did not ask for it. It's telling your coworker about your divorce trauma over lunch, or tweeting your latest mental breakdown to 47 followers and a bot, you know? Psychologically, it is a maladaptive coping mechanism, which is rooted in a desperate need for connection or control. So we're going to unpack that real quick. There's attachment theory, which is a 2017 study. I believe it was in Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, found that people with anxious attachment styles, which are those with fear of abandonment, are 50% more likely to overshare. Right? Which I have, fear of abandonment. I overshare. And that's part of it. It's that attachment theory, right? These people are trying to force intimacy, but it's basically like proposing on a first date. It's creepy, not cute at all, right? And then there is the emotional dysregulation. Another research study from Emotion magazine, I think that's a magazine. Anyways, Emotion in 2018 shows that oversharing spikes when you're emotionally overwhelmed, right? So it's almost a panic response, survival response, if you will. We talk about it all the time, how a lot of our behavioral systems are ancestrally coded into us, right? Genetically. So it's this survival mechanism. I got to get them to like me. I'm all over the place emotionally. I got to keep going and talking until something lands, right? Basically, your prefrontal cortex, which is the part that tells you, maybe you don't tell the Uber driver about your sex life, that part is completely offline. And then your amygdala, which is the emotional panic button of your head, your brain, that part begins to take over. And we do not want the amygdala. Go look at every one of the episodes that we put out. We do not want the amygdala taken over, right? And then the third part to this is social media. I mean, I went ahead and put this on there, but it's social media amplification, I guess, is the technical term they're using now. There was a 2021 study in Computers and Human Behavior that found that 70% of social media users overshare online, which is driven by likes and validation, right? You can see this on Twitter or X. Those posts are a breeding ground for this, right? It's every freaking trauma dump that is a cry for a heart emoji, right? And so we do a lot of this for validation. We do a lot of this because we feel unworthy, and so we want the likes and we want the validation. We want to convince people to like us, right? And that we did this in our episode talking about setting boundaries. Like I just got off the phone with my brother, sponsor, best friend today, and was talking about, like, I'm just shifting in this point in my life where I don't go where I'm tolerated. I go where I'm wanted, right? And that's a very healthy spot, in my opinion, to be in, because you don't want to ever feel like an inconvenience. And if people are just rolling their eyes and tolerating you, you don't want to be around that, right? But let's talk about this as far as like recovery is concerned. If you are sober, oversharing is an absolute siren call, right? Like when I was drinking, I would overshare constantly just to be able to feel seen, All right, I'd spill my guts to anyone who would listen, thinking constantly that it's going to fill the void, and it did not. It was never able to fill that void. Right, I just looked like an idiot. It left me feeling vulnerable, ashamed, and craving another drink just to numb out the embarrassment. Right. There's a study in 2020 in Addiction Research and Theory that found that 45% of recovering addicts report oversharing as a relapse trigger. And that is often tied to seeking validation that they lost through addiction. Okay. So again, we're just seeking this addiction, right? The hard truth of this is that nobody wants your unfiltered life story. They are not your therapist and you're not their hero. Now, a caveat to this, I am very big on having a few close people in your life that you can trust, that you can just information dump on, right? And that's okay. There's a time and a place for it. What I'm not trying to paint a picture of saying that you never talk about what you're struggling with. You never talk about your trauma, your life story, whatnot. I'm not at all doing that. I'm just saying that it's not for like the gas station clerk when you're going in to get a Coke and a Snickers, right? There's a line, a fine line that we tend to toe with all of this. And if every time you meet somebody, you are forcing this affection, this trying to gain their affection, you're forcing this narrative where I'm going to tell you everything about me until you find something that you like. That's just a desperate cry for help is all that is. And so that's all I'm saying is we've got to paint this picture where we find that balance. If you're married, if you have a partner that you've been with for a long time, if you have a person that you can consider a brother or a sister, very, very close to you, and you can entrust them with everything, they know where the bodies are buried, that kind of thing. That is absolutely a time. Now, you don't want every interaction in this relationship to be about spilling your guts and dumping, the trauma onto them. There's 100% a time and a place and people that you can trust to be able to talk about this. You don't have to necessarily pay a behavioral therapist to help you out with this. But there are times where a therapist, they're trained to be able to help you navigate those treacherous waters. Sometimes it's like a ball of yarn, right? And we tug at this one thread, like we're struggling with this and it's because we're so insecure here and there, whatever. And then that just begins to unravel everything else. And that's where you really need to get some, in my opinion, some professional help. And there's such a negative stigma on that. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, I'm just trying to think clearly again. I don't want to lose sleep every time I have a thought. And that's important. Like for me, I would probably say I have 3 people in my life that I can trust with every bit of information that comes out of my mouth. And these are people that I lean in on. They're ones I'd take a bullet for. They'd take a bullet for me. And it's important to have those people in your life. We also have an episode from a couple weeks back, 4 or 5 weeks back, about talking about community, talking about just that village mentality, right? And it's very important to have those people in your life. So don't hear me say that oversharing is basically just shutting your mouth and becoming a zombie and avoiding and don't say anything. I'm not at all saying that. All this is saying is that if your oversharing is somehow or another tied to your desperate need for validation, and so you're telling some random stranger, somebody comes and drops off the pizza that you ordered, and they have to stand there for 35 minutes while you just dump out all your childhood trauma, that's oversharing. You're seeking the validation from that, right? There needs to be an outlet. There's a lot of the mental health issues with men especially where we don't feel safe, we don't feel secure to be able to be vulnerable and share ourselves in that way, and so we internalize everything, right? And having that habit of internalization is just a bomb waiting to go off. It is very corrosive to you, not only emotionally, but also physically, right? So anyways, going on to part 2, this is the consequences of oversharing, right? Oversharing is not completely harmless. It's an absolute wrecking ball to your relationships and to your self-esteem. And here's why it screws you over, right? You've got the element of social rejection, which again, I'm pulling from a lot of studies here, but there's a 2019 study in the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology that found that 65% of people feel less close to someone who overshares. You think that you're bonding with them and they're trying to plan their escape, right? I'm sure you've been in that, even if you are an oversharer, you've probably been in that scenario too, where someone is just, they won't stop. I'm sure some of you feel that way when you're watching my YouTube videos, and that's okay. I still love you, but I'm still recording, so get over it. But this oversharing where you are so wrapped up in your emotions and the emotional dysregulation around it that you're not paying attention to the fact that these people are very uncomfortable, right? And that's the importance of having close people in your life. You build a bond, you build a relationship with these people, and you know that they're not going anywhere, right? Those are the people you can overshare with. Those are also the people that can tell you to shut up when you need to shut up. And they're not doing it to be mean, they're doing it because they love you, right? But then we have the shame spiral, right? Oversharing begins to trigger regret, right? There's another study that I saw that showed that post oversharing shame increases depressive symptoms by 30%. You spill, and then you cringe, and then you feel worse. There's a lot of argument about this with cognitive behavioral therapy about how the reason our problems still are difficult and they are our problems is because we talk about it a lot. And I think there's valid arguments for that. I also think that you can't address anything until you're willing to talk about it. You're willing to identify it and do the work around it. So there, again, if you're walking into your therapist and you're talking about the same thing every single session, something in you is not allowing you to move on, right? But this shame spiral that you get in, it's this whole idea of constantly talking about the same thing and never doing work around it. And every time you're talking about it, you just become more and more depressed because it's scratching at that scab, like you're digging up those tough memories. I talked about this when I did my 4th step work, right? I had never fully addressed all of these things that I had done and all of these people I had hurt and this pattern of behavior that I had. And so when I was doing my 4th step work and I was, lighting the pages on fire, just burning through this notebook, writing everything down, a lot of it just made me feel like crap. I would spend an entire night. I would put in a good 3-4 hours of doing this work, and I felt like garbage. I felt unplugged. I felt sick even, and it's difficult. However, when I started gaining the solution around it, when I was able to move on into my 5th step and I was able to get it out there and have people call me out for my patterns of behavior, then there was like this little bit of relief because, okay, now I can kind of see the light, peeking through those trees, right? I know I got off the trail here. I know I can't find my way out, but there's some light over there. I can kind of work towards that. And that's a good feeling. It takes work to get there though. Then there's the other part of this, which is boundary violations, I think is the way that I put this down. But you're not just hurting yourself, right? Oversharing can begin to burden other people, which makes them feel trapped. And in recovery, this is very deadly, right? You alienate your support network, like AA buddies, who they are the help, right? And they're there for you. They're the support group, but they're not supposed to be your emotional dumpster. Right? We're drawing a line here, right? And we're trying to find the balance in all of this. But for recovering addicts, oversharing is a tightrope. It's difficult, right? Like I remember early sobriety where oversharing at AA meetings, we talked about not doing that. I overshared at an AA meeting thinking that my story was just absolutely profound, right? Right there. Thinking my story is profound, I'm going to say all of this stuff because I'm seeking some level of validation, right? Half of the room was just checking their watches, and then worse, I would leave just feeling completely exposed, like I'd given away pieces of myself that I couldn't get back. And that vulnerability pushed me towards isolation slowly, right? And isolation is what we all know can push you back towards your substance of choice, right? There's a 2022 study in substance abuse that found that 55% of relapsed addicts cited social disconnection, which is often fueled by oversharing backlash, as a key factor. All right. Oversharing is kind of like getting drunk and texting your ex. Like it may feel good for 5 seconds when you get back together with them, you just that little hookup or whatnot, but then you're in the shower crying and regretting everything in your life, right? It's just this tightrope. It's this balance. Okay. Always, always, always get into the practice of asking yourself, what are my motives? Why am I doing this? Right? I have to catch myself a lot in this because even a simple explanation to a question that my wife may ask me can turn into some big time oversharing. I won't shut up. I'm going to keep rambling on. And it's tough because I'm a verbal processor as well. But there's this point where like she has to shut her brain off. Like she can't take in any more information. Like, why are you still talking about the same thing? And that's a very difficult spot, right? I'm just saying there's a line with all of it, and you have to find that for yourself, and you have to know the room. You have to be able to understand the people that you're talking to. Part 3 of this is oversharing and addiction, which is, we're going to call this a toxic dance, is the way that I wrote this down. But addiction and oversharing are kind of like Bonnie and Clyde, where they're partners in crime that are just going to wreck your life, right? And here's how they begin to feed off of each other. You've got seeking validation. You've got, seeking validation, impaired impulse control, and then there was one more. It's got to be somewhere. Impaired impulse control, and then the group dynamics in recovery. Okay. So again, I'm going to keep reiterating this, but we're not trying to get you to not say anything. We're just trying to get you to find the balance, right? So back to the seeking validation of this. Addiction often stems from very low self-worth. We talked about this at the very beginning of the episode. There was a 2018 study in drug and alcohol dependence that found that 60% of addicts use substances to cope with feelings of inadequacy, right? We all know that the addiction and recovery aspect comes from finding some level of coping mechanism. And unfortunately, we develop an allergy to whatever it is that we're using, and we keep using it, right? We hate ourselves. We hate who we are. We hate what we do. Everything. We don't even feel comfortable in our own skin. We don't feel like we fit in with anybody. And so we begin to drink and use to cope with all of that, right? In recovery, oversharing becomes the new drug. Okay, so look at it that way, where you're just spilling your soul just to feel worthy. Okay, and this is the important aspect for me in my relationship with God, is that I know that He created me as being in His image. And if I'm finding my value in Him, if I'm asking Him to help me see myself the way that He sees me, I don't need anything else to define me, if you will, right? If I'm finding my worth in my career, in the paycheck that I bring home, in other people, friends, whatnot, those are temporary, right? Those are finite, right? If we're finding our power and our worth in something that is infinite, whole, perfect, then that helps us understand a little bit more about who we are. I'm not saying it's a perfect ride. I struggle every day. I think the human condition of all of this is that we will struggle with this. There are days where I feel like an imposter. There are days where I feel so unworthy. There are days where I feel pathetic, like I don't need to be here. And those are times where, fortunately, where I'm at now, I'm able to look at that and be like, okay, this is delusional thinking. Something is causing this. Let's figure out where it's coming from. And it's a tough spot to be in. I get it. We've alluded to this a lot in other episodes. It's a very dark spot to be in. But if your worth is so low, and if you're struggling with that and you're starting to find it, you think that you're finding it by coping with alcohol and drugs, it's just not going to work out. I promise you, it's only going to get worse. And then oversharing, that becomes your new drug. Constantly trying to seek the validation, it's just not good, right? Then there's the impaired impulse control, right? So alcohol and drugs begin to fry your impulse control. And so this is a difficult thing too. We talked about this last episode, but alcohol and drugs will begin to fry the impulse control. And so does early recovery, right? Like, it's a very difficult transition for your body to make, where you're not using the substance anymore, whatnot. But there was a 2020 neuroscience and biobehavioral review that I was reading about, the study in that showed that recovering addicts have significantly reduced prefrontal cortex activity for up to 2 years past your sobriety. Okay? 2 years past your sobriety. That's why you blurt out your trauma at the worst moments, right? Your body is trying to recalibrate. Okay? Like, I had to look at it. I was drinking over 2 gallons at the end right there. I was drinking around 2 gallons, a little bit more than 2 gallons a day of whiskey. Okay. I was putting down handles. I was doing that per day. Okay. I did that for so long that my body became so used to it that if I stopped, I started having the the DTs, and I was shaking. And even if I wasn't physically shaking, internally, I felt like I was shaking. I would have cold and hot flashes constantly. I would constantly cramp like around my liver area. I remember just feeling like I just got stabbed with a hot knife. When I would wake up in the morning to go and brush my teeth, just sticking my tongue out made me gag. And so I would have to take a shot. It's 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning. I'd have to take a shot of whiskey just to be able to calm my nerves enough to be able to do something as simple as brushing my teeth. When your body becomes reliant on a substance to that level, to that extent, and then all of a sudden you're done with it, and now all of these things that you used to use alcohol for to cope with, you're faced with it again, except now you don't have alcohol and drugs to cope. Your body is going to constantly go through this recalibration period. It's trying to learn how to live again in the right way, right? And it can take up to 2 years. Alcohol stays in your system for a very, very long time. And so during that time, during that period of recalibration, that prefrontal cortex, it took some damage, right? It hasn't been used to working because you ignore it and you just listen to that amygdala. That's the alarm system going off. Okay, so this is a hard thing to do because you're very impulsive. You lose that impulse control. So don't be so hard on yourself. Understand that your body's just going through a whole lot and you just have to have the awareness to start working through it, right? And this is also good to have that high accountability because people who have more sobriety than you do and who have already recalibrated can look at you and say, okay, look, hey, this is what you're going through. Just chill the F out. You're going to be all right. But then we also have the group dynamic in recovery, right? AA or NA meetings begin to encourage sharing. But there is definitely a line, as we've talked every single time, right? Oversharing, which is basically just monopolizing meetings or, dumping all the graphic details, that begins to alienate peers, right? 40% of group members feel less engaged when someone overshares excessively, okay? AA and NA, like most of them, they get it, right? You're going through a whole lot. This is going to be tough. But if every time you share and it's, everyone begins to roll their eyes because they're like, okay, here goes 30 minutes. Like this is going to be the end of the meeting. We're not going to have any more time for anybody else. That begins to wear down on other people. It's a red flag for you personally. And so that's just, again, finding that line, right? In my first year sober, I treated AA like it was my personal soapbox, right? And I had one person call me out for this, and I never really paid attention to it until later on, but he was right. But I would ramble about my rock bottom moments, thinking that I was somehow, inspiring. Again, I'm seeking validation. I'm trying to create this story or say this story in a way that you're going to love me for it, right? But that one guy pulled me aside and was like, Michael, we get it. Like, you were a mess. So were we. Just freaking move on. That's like that. That's like a gut punch, right? It stung, but I mean, he was right. Oversharing was my way of clinging on to my old identity as the broken one, right? And letting go of that meant learning just to shut up and listen. And that's tough, right? I do this in my relationship with God too. Like I struggle so much in my prayer life with just shutting up and listening. Okay. It's tough. It's tough. And I get it. For some of us, it's tough. For some of us, it's not. We don't talk at all. But I lied to y'all. We have 4 parts to this apparently. But part 4, we're going to have the 5 psychological tools that I told you. 5 psychological tools to help you stop oversharing, right? But, anyways, enough diagnosis. Let's just go ahead and fix this. These are the 5 evidence-based tools that are going to help curb oversharing, which are going to be tailored for everyone, but especially for those in recovery. These are not going to be the warm fuzzies. They are practical and they work if you actually do it, right? Number 1, pause and assess. We're going to call this the 10-second rule, right? Before you spill your guts, wait 10 seconds and then ask, does this person need to know this, right? There was a 2017 cognitive therapy and research study that found that brief pauses reduce impulse disclosures by about 40%. So in recovery, this begins to save you from dumping your relapse fears on a random stranger, right? We pause when agitated or doubtful. Number 2, set boundaries with yourself. This is very important, right? Define what is private. Write a list therapy stuff, family drama, addiction triggers, whatever it is, those are off limits except with trusted people. Okay. Boundary setting improves self-esteem, I think, by 25%, if I read that correctly earlier. But for addicts, this means protecting your sobriety story for the right time and place, right? We are to share with others. Okay. You don't go through everything that you went through and then just hold it all in forever. Like, we're sharing this with other people, right? But there's a time and a place for all of it, right? Number 3, practice active listening. This is going to be tough for a lot of you if you're like me, where you just like to talk, but instead of talking, just listen. Okay. I know that sounds simple enough, but listening increases likability by about 30%. We talked about this in previous episodes, right? Just be a listener. Listen. Instead of waiting for your turn to talk, care enough about that person that's talking to you, that's entrusting you with this information, where you can just sit back and actually repeat in your head what they're saying to you. Try and remember it, right? It's like writing it down in your head, and that's even a good interview tactic. That's a good sales tactic. That's a good human trait, is just to listen to someone so intently that you can repeat back what they just said to you. It makes them feel wanted and cared for, right? You know how that feels when someone listens to you so intently that they're able to just repeat what you said almost. So this is a very big psychological tool that'll help you out, right? In AA, you can ask someone else about their day, right? Instead of your day, right? It builds connection without exposing you. Okay. I just had a call with my sponsor tonight, and I realized, again, he's my best friend, but it's like, we only talk about me, and I'm so selfish because every time we talk, I just ramble on about my nonsense. I never ask you how you're doing, and I know that you're going through a lot. So what's up? And like, that's just listen, that's all it is. Number 4, use journaling as an outlet. I will say it every freaking episode until y'all figure it out, but journaling is very powerful. Write your thoughts instead of blurting them. I can't remember the exact numbers, so I'm probably going to butcher this, but journaling reduces emotional impulsivity by like 35% or something like that, right? You're just focusing on what you're saying and what you're thinking, right? You're putting it down, you're writing it. Okay, and talk out loud to yourself if you want to, but like, this journaling process helps you pause. In recovery, a journal is your safe place to process without risking shame. That goes with life in general, right? And number 5, seek therapy for the big stuff. There are some things that belong in a therapist's office, not group chat. The reason a therapist works is because they don't have any skin in the game. They're middle ground, right? They don't have any emotional ties to you. You're able to talk to them, and they're able to bring analytical, logical knowledge and say, okay, here's how we can start working on this. But they can't talk about it to anybody else, right? There's a 2021 American psychologist study that found that therapy reduces oversharing by 50%. By addressing the root causes like anxiety. It cuts it in half, y'all. It works. CBT works for the win. In recovery, a therapist who understands addiction can help you unpack without oversharing in meetings. All right. So it's very important to, I've gotten to the point where, like, if I'm going to look for a therapist, I'm going to look for someone who's a recovered addict alcoholic, right? They're going to help me understand me more than anyone else who's not, I guess. I don't know, but it's powerful, right? And look, if I can go from drunkenly confessing my sins to a bar full of strangers to keeping my trap shut, kind of, you can too, right? Oversharing is like peeing in public. It's a brief relief for a lifelong regret, right? Learn to zip it and you'll thank me later. Okay? Anyways, Sober Psychology listeners, we've just waded through the swamp of oversharing. It's not just awkward, it's a psychological trap that begins to scream insecurity, and in recovery, it's a one-way ticket to relapse city, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. But you're not a reality show, I guess is the best way I could say that. You're not a reality show. Stop broadcasting your pain, okay? The science is very clear behind all of this. Oversharing alienates people, it fuels shame, and it keeps you stuck in one spot. But you're absolutely not doomed. You've got tools, okay? We'll go back through them. Pause before you speak. Set boundaries with yourself. Listen intently and listen more. Journal your thoughts, ideas, all the things that you're struggling with, right? And get a therapist. Those are your 5 steps right there. 5 tools to help you with oversharing. These are not optional. They are your armor against the chaos. All right? And for my sober warriors, hear this: recovery is about rebuilding, not rehashing. All right. I fell into this trap too. I was the recovered guy, and that's all I could ever be. I still struggle with it, but you are beginning to rebuild. You don't have to rehash everything else. You did bad things. You did wrong. So did everybody else. You can just move on from it as long as you're living the right way. Okay. Every time you begin to overshare, you've given away power, right? Take it back. Here we go. You're not your past, and you don't need to shout it to prove that you're here, right? I learned that the hard way, and if a mess like me can figure it out, so can you. If you are listening on Spotify, we'll catch you next week. YouTube champs, if this helped at all, hit that like button. If you're new here on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. It would be much appreciated. Love you guys so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Anyways, this is Michael, your sober psychology host, signing off. Keep your story tight, your sobriety tighter, and laugh at the chaos. All right, have fun with it. Until next time, stay sober, stay sharp, keep your head up, keep your heart open, go help somebody. Love you guys.